Alright.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 Baseball coaching community. I'm going to come right out and say I'm in a pretty bummed out mood right now. Minutes before I went to record this, being Tuesday, the day that it's being published. Typically, I record these podcasts a week before, a few days before, or the day before it goes live on Tuesday. But this week, busy week. And so here I am on Tuesday recording it. But right before I jumped on the mic here, I looked down on my text messages and one of my grade school buddies sent out a text to our group of friends that have stayed close over the years, 30 plus years, saying that one of our good friends is in the hospital sick. And this good friend of mine who's in the hospital right now, Garrett, is somebody that I met in Little League. We played in the same league, which didn't have a lot of teams. There were like 6 teams in the league. So you knew everybody from the age of 10 up through junior high. We played in the same league. And then I played baseball and football with them in high school. And then when I got a scholarship to Long Beach State for baseball, he came up to me and asked if we could be roommates because that's where he was planning on going also. And so we were roommates our freshman year at Long Beach State. And Garrett is one of those guys that always came through with a smile when he saw you, when he was talking to you. Talk about batting 1,000. He's batted 1,000 when it comes to making you feel good and making you feel and believe that he was excited to see you. So I'm going to follow through with everything, with all the items that we have to cover, some really good stuff to cover. And I'm going to do my best to bring some energy, even though I'm just really bummed out. And it makes me want to share the message, the reminder that, hey, life goes fast. Some days may seem like they're taking forever. Some weeks may drag on, but I think you all know what I'm talking about when you say you blink and you're 40. And it feels like yesterday, Garrett and I were playing Little League Baseball over 30 years ago. So I'm a big proponent, a big fan of using things that come our way that are sad as almost a booster to live a better life, to live a more full life, to be more appreciative, to be fully present and enjoy each day and make the most of it so we don't have regrets looking back. And I'll tell you what, all of you that are coaching, which is pretty much everybody that listens to this podcast, you're definitely not going to look back with regret that you didn't get involved and participate more with your kids' youth. And that's really awesome. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for Garrett right now. It doesn't look good, but he's a tough one. And let's keep in mind that the days may seem long, but the years will go fast. So when you're rushing out of work, when you're having to go back and work later in the evening because you went to coach, practice, went to take your kid to play catch, to the batting cages, you're doing the right thing. All right, we're going to move into the episode here. I got some good stuff I want to bring to you, and I know Garrett would want me to push through and bring my A game for all of you because that's how he's lived his life, not a complainer. Push through and make the best of it. So last week I shared out that I had an arm care checklist, an off-season /preseason arm care checklist. Now this doesn't have every little detail that you might consider, but these are the big 4 in my opinion. Number 1, we have to ask ourselves, did our players take at least 2, 3, even 4 consecutive months off from throwing this year? Did they take some time off from throwing? The great thing about baseball is that you can pretty much hit year round. You can take ground balls year round without needing to add a throw to it. You can work on some base running without having to throw. There are a lot of things that players can work on without needing to throw. So keep that in mind in the off season, especially hitting. With hitting being such a difficult task and something that relies as much on repetition as anything, maybe in all of sports, players should already be taking that time off from throwing because they should be allocating that time towards hitting, fielding ground balls, catching fly balls, strength and conditioning. And we're just talking about the off season and the early preseason when time is really limited. They're probably doing another sport or they have other things scheduled. Now, the question, did the kids take 3 consecutive, 4 consecutive, or 2 consecutive months off from throwing this year? The reason I'm mentioning different durations, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, is it depends on the player. It depends on the workload they had the year before. It depends on how much time they have the on-ramp to build up their arm strength for the coming season. It depends on their past arm health. It could also depend on if the player's going through a growth spurt. A super tall player might have an elbow that needs a little more rest to strengthen up and solidify. So there's definitely different factors. The ASMI, American Sports Medicine Institute, is considered the best resource at this time for recommendations on how to keep the arm healthy. And they recommend at least 3 consecutive months off. In fact, they recommend that adolescent baseball pitchers should not engage in overhead throwing of any kind for at least 2 to 3 months per year, with 4 months being preferred. Additionally, they recommend that baseball pitchers don't pitch competitively for more than 8 months out of the year, so a max of 8 months. The good news is there's so many things you can do to get better as a baseball player, not just as a hitter or an infielder or an outfielder or a base runner, but also as a pitcher when it comes to strength and conditioning that does not include or involve overhead throwing. So number 1 on my preseason, off-season arm care checklist. Number 1 thing, did the kid take 4 months off from throwing this year? Did they take 3 months off? Yes or no? Number 2, when the kid starts throwing again, are they gradually on-ramped? Do they have a 1 to 2 month period of on-ramping? And of course, the on-ramping term is like getting on an interstate, getting on a highway or a freeway, and think of the arm for most players being like a fully loaded semi. They need a pretty good size on-ramp. So let's treat our pitchers like a slow-moving, fully loaded, oversized semi and not a Tesla Model S Plaid. Again, pitchers will vary here, but it's good to have a process that is rooted in the best science we have available at this time. Number 3 on the off-season / preseason arm care checklist, when on-ramping, when building up the arm strength, are the pitch counts tracked? Are higher pitch counts phased in appropriately? And is adequate rest given? Early in the on-ramping process, the first couple weeks, more rest will need to be given, most likely. Number 4, do they use their legs, hips, and glutes and core to generate the vast majority of the momentum that they have or they put together to get them going toward their target, the catcher's glove, home plate, etc. So number 4, as they're building up, there are a lot of things when it comes to the pitching delivery that can be improved. The priorities will vary from pitcher to pitcher, but at the end of the day, the number 1 thing, the 80-20 principle with regard to reducing the stress and fatigue on the arm, is getting the lower half engaged, and more specifically, getting the hips and the glutes, the legs, to help generate that momentum toward the target. The lower half should lead the way and do the heavy lifting, the bulk of the momentum generation. So those are the big 4. They're not the only 4 things, but number 1, do the players take enough time off from throwing each year? Are they on ramp gradually and appropriately? Are their initial pitch counts tracked, even though it's not a game and it's not tracked by the scorekeeper or the league? Are you tracking those pitches and are you building them up appropriately? Reverse engineer it from however many pitches you want them to throw in the first game. Reverse engineer it. Their first bullpen should be nowhere near what their pitch count will be in the first game 2 months from now. Build up and give adequate rest early on. More rest early, less rest later, all other things being okay. And number 4, are the pitchers using their lower half to generate momentum, power, or are they relying more than they should be on their arm and their shoulder to generate power on their pitches / throws? All right, that should help give some clarity, 4 things to keep an eye on, to work on as the spring season comes about. Before I jump into a newsletter email I got from JP Nurbin. JP was on the podcast about a month ago. Great interview. If you didn't listen to that already, he's an expert in team culture building and helping coaches make the best of working with parents. And so I get JP's email newsletter, and one came that I wanted to read to all of you. You can sign up for it over at tocculture.com. tocculture.com. And before I dive into that newsletter, real quick, I have a few interviews scheduled for February, and it got me thinking about something I've said a few times here, and that is I only want to bring on coaches and people that are a good fit for the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, though that definitely does not mean I only bring on coaches and people that agree with everything we're saying here. I just want to make sure that they're a good fit. They just have to be coaches who can clearly reason out what they believe works well and take an open-minded angle to all things while also having the correct things prioritized, such as the key parts of youth coaching. For example, creating an enjoyable learning environment for all players. Their ego is in check. They care more about using baseball as an enjoyable way to prepare kids for life. And they're definitely not overly concerned with what the scoreboard says. So I have said in the past, I bring on coaches that I think are a good fit. I definitely don't mean that I only bring on coaches that agree with what we're saying here. They just have to prioritize the right things and be coming from a good place. After that, we're going to learn from them, and we're going to be open-minded and bring them on. So I have 2 interviews scheduled. I actually have one that will be recorded in 2 days. I'm excited for that one. And in 2 weeks, I'm recording a podcast with another grade school buddy of mine, somebody who played professional baseball, college baseball, and is just finishing up coaching his 2 boys all the way through the youth baseball world, that phase of their career. So somebody who played pro ball, played college ball, but also, and more importantly, just went through everything we're going through right now. So JP Nurbin, again, came on a few weeks back. Go check that interview out. Here's the newsletter titled, Started from the Bottom, Now We're Here. And this is written by Coach Anderson, a high school basketball coach. Now, I know it's high school and most of us are coaching youth baseball, but once I'm done with this newsletter, I'm pretty sure you'll see why or understand why I'm reading this. Being ranked number 1 was never the goal. Nevertheless, less than 3 years removed from a 1-20 campaign, here we are. For at least this week, we find ourselves atop the Class 3A rankings. It has been a stunning turnaround. It's fair to ask, how did we get here? First and foremost, as Bill Belichick is fond of saying, it's a player's game. We had an influx of talent that simply wasn't there in previous years, and that matters as much as anything else, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Year 1, at our first team meeting, prior to the start of my first season, we shared with the players and parents a graph of expected wins for the 2021-2022 season using a simple formula, percentage of returning points times wins from last season. We charted all the teams in our conference and we plotted them on a graph. Our purpose was to ground expectations and to illustrate just how far we had to go to catch the teams in front of us. I was trying to communicate this is going to take time. At the same time, we wanted to establish goals that were not outcome dependent. What would make a successful season? Passing 1, 2, or 5 teams in our league? Was that even possible? I wasn't sure. What I did know was that basketball was not something that players looked forward to. In previous seasons, they lost numerous talented athletes that chose to specialize in other sports. To that point, the basketball experience was a grind, and so to plug the talent drain, we focused all of our attention on improving the culture at the high school level. An experience to look forward to. When I first uttered this phrase, the kids looked at me like I was speaking Chinese. I wanted practice, games, the locker room, etc. to be something they looked forward to at the end of the day. Truth be told, I wanted basketball to be the best part of their day. How did we do that? We made space for relationships. We worked hard to get to know each individual player. We played games at team dinners. We played games in practice. We did things with the sole purpose of having fun together. We talked about the memories we wanted to create, and our seniors ate it up. They had been in some cancerous cultures before and were desperate for something different. Once they bought in, everyone else followed suit. Another aspect of our environment was how we showed up as coaches. We expected players to work hard, but we never took ourselves too seriously. Gone were the days of yelling, conditioning, and pressure to perform. In their place, we tried to create a place of learning where mistakes become opportunities, and the coach's job was to teach. If the players couldn't get something right, we assumed it was because they hadn't done it enough yet, or we didn't teach it well enough. In both situations, players and coaches worked together to get better. Chasing reps. Another phrase that became a rallying cry for us in practice was chasing reps. As the roster became more athletic, it became apparent that our biggest deficiency was that our players had not played as much basketball as most of our opponents. We were literally thousands of shots behind each of the players in our league, and so we emphasized finding ways to catch up. This allowed us to practice fast. We went from one thing to the next at lightning speed. We obsessed about efficiency in our drills to maximize repetitions, using as many baskets and small-sided games as possible so that no one was ever standing and watching. We tried to minimize coaches talking and maximize players doing. As a result, players started improving quickly, which only added to their belief that our approach was working. We guessed right. There are two significant areas where it feels like we got lucky. First, our systems and strategy decisions ended up being a perfect fit for our players and their abilities. We were working with players with limited ability and experience, so our approach was exceedingly simple in year one. We played one defense exclusively and had fewer than 4 actions on offense. We ran no set plays. We followed the sage advice of the late Don Meyer to be simple, sound, and solid. We believe the more they think, the slower their feet. So we gave them very little to think about. We gave players the freedom to make plays, and we placed a heavy emphasis on sharing the ball and taking great shots. You can see our statistical improvement in the year one below. Win-loss record went from 1-20 to 12-11. Field goal percentage from 34% to 50%. 3-point field goal percentage almost doubled. The opponent's field goal percentage went down 3%. They scored 16 more points a game, and their opponents scored 1 fewer point a game. So a 17-point differential on average. Continuing on. We also got lucky in guessing how to spend our time. With so many areas we could choose to work on, we had to make educated guesses on what would generate the most return on our investment. We started with the things that happen most in a game: half-court offense, half-court defense, press break, and shooting. There's more to the game than this, but if we couldn't function in these areas, we had no chance. I'm going to chime in here. The 80-20 principle right there. In fact, the last 2 paragraphs are almost a carbon copy of what we've been discussing on this podcast for years. Continuing on, we started 0-4 that year, but we're becoming more competitive, and we started losing close games in the fourth quarter. We were terrible in late game situations, and do you know why? Because we spent 0 seconds working on it until mid-December, when we were finally competent enough to have a late lead. We didn't work on rebounding until January. We completely neglected out-of-bounds situations for most of the year. We tried to be very selective on how we spent our time and energy to improve first and foremost. I think this is one of the hardest things to do for coaches, discerning the few things we should do from all the things we could do. The 80-20 principle. At the end of the day, nothing was more important to us in year one than the experience the players created for each other. That led to greater athlete retention. It made the work more enjoyable, and it made the product more fun to watch because it was obvious that our players liked being around each other. It goes without saying that we were fortunate that a confluence of factors came together that led to our current success. Food for thought. Nate Sanderson. And that came from the JP Nurbin newsletter at tocculture.com, titled Started from the Bottom, Now We're Here. So they're at the top of the Class 3A rankings 3 years after having a 1-20 campaign. There's a formula that works. There's a process that works. There's a template that works. The 80-20 principle should guide us in almost everything. In fact, I got an email this past week from a listener who's been with us about 6 months. Just a great email, just really uplifting. I got 3 emails this past week alone. But one that really stood out was one of the listeners, and you know who you are, saying that the stuff they're learning here, they're using in their day job, running a crew. And I'll just say this crew that this listener is the leader of, the captain of, is out saving lives every day and using this stuff that we talk about here. So the 80-20 principle, prioritizing quality repetitions, or as they say in the newsletter, chasing reps, more specifically chasing quality repetitions. Quality repetitions in the things that matter the most come game time, and the things that matter most when it comes to creating a fun environment, a great team culture, and getting our players, our kids, better prepared for life using, in our case, baseball as the vehicle to do it. So I was reading that newsletter, and I like to share those examples and also share it out in a way that's worded differently so it may possibly resonate even better. Now we're going to finish with 2 coaching quotes of the week. But before we do, Shohei Ohtani, he's that decent baseball player. Shohei Ohtani, although I call him Shotani. I don't know why more people don't call him Shotani. I feel like that has an aspect of being able to be trademarked or marketed better. So I was talking to my brother, and this is just a fun little fact that I think escaped the media. I got this from my brother. I was talking to him the other morning, and he said, hey, I got this email from the California State Controller's office. My brother's got a small business in California, a family business, and he does water treatment. Shout out to Glacier Laboratories. If you know anybody who works around cooling towers, go check out glacierlabs.com and get in contact with my brother Jake. So he sends me this email from the California State Controller's office. And I'm not going to dive in too much here, it's just real quick. And they released the statement, the state controller Malia Cohen from California in Sacramento released an announcement. Basically, it said they're going to go through and they're going to change this loophole, this tax loophole that California has, that from what I understand and what I'm reading on this letter, Shohei Ohtani is not going to have to pay state income tax on all that money that is deferred insofar as that he doesn't live, in California, which he very well may go back to Japan. I could see him going back there. I know a lot of players come to America and they stay here because where they came from, especially with the money that they're making, they'd rather be here. It's a little safer, but Japan's a great country and he very well may go back over there because he's like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Tom Brady, Taylor Swift, all rolled into one in terms of popularity over there. So he very well may go back to Japan when his contract's up, when he starts getting paid. And I did the math on this. California, 12.3% state income tax for his bracket. It's going to save him $84 million. And I only calculated the deferred part, not the total contract. $84 million he's going to save. So that contract with Shohei, and Shohei's so much fun to watch. So I thought that was just interesting, something I want to share out that I didn't see talked about anywhere. I know that contract got a lot of scrutiny, but thought that was interesting. Little side note. All right, let's finish strong with the coaching quotes of the week. I got two here. Quote, good coaches are athlete-centered, not self-centered. End quote. And that comes from coachingyoungathletes.com. coachingyoungathletes.com. Quote, good coaches are athlete-centered, people-centered, not self-centered. And the next quote, also from coachingyoungathletes.com. Quote, develop young athletes so that they can compete well whether you are there or not. End quote. Develop young athletes so they can compete well, so they can do well in competition whether you are there or not. End quote. And again, those are from coachingyoungathletes.com. When we're out there on the field, especially during the games, are we coming from a place of ego-driven motives? That's self-centered. If it's player-centered, athlete-centered, the results, the outcome will be so much better in all the areas that matter, and even on the scoreboard too. And when we coach up our players, we're trying to get them so they can compete well, whether we're there or not. For youth baseball, this is not 100% feasible, especially those lower levels. 7 and 8-year-olds, they're going to need guidance during the game, of course. And I don't think we should overcoach them on every situation so they're perfect and know everything that could happen in the game. So I don't want you to take it that way. But it's like we're raising kids. When we coach up our kids, our own kids, I truly believe that if we do our job right, we should be able to sleep well at night when our kids go off, when they go off to college, when our son or daughter goes off and lives on their own. Did we prepare them to do well, to take care of themselves, to be safe, whether we're right there or not? And I think it's most important at the youth level for baseball and sports to make sure that you can get the kids on autopilot on the big needle movers. By the end of the season, they should be able to tell you or know whether that pitch was one they should have swung at or not. They should be able to feel their pitching delivery out a little bit and know if one of the main things they've been working on is off and be able to correct it. Not all of them, but at least some of those main components. So those coaching quotes, food for thought as we shape our paradigm to be better coaches, better parents, better people, better leaders. So I do know I didn't bring the energy level like I normally do, but I hope you all can understand. I definitely wanted to deliver a good episode for all of you. I hope that it was. Hey, until next week, let's take care of our health. Let's take care of our family. Enjoy those moments. Be present. Let's be there for our close friends. And let's take this information out to the field and put it into play. Always great being here with all of you. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.